Hey, DawgNation, I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. A lot of ground to cover on today's show. Big recruiting win for Georgia yesterday. We'll recap that. We'll look more at the impact the Georgia defense may be able to make on the upcoming season. A lot of reaction continuing about what Zamir White has said this week about his motivation for the upcoming season. We will continue to pay a little bit of attention to that. A little bit of a preview of Todd Monken, who's slated to give us some more details of what's going to be going on with the Georgia offense. We are all over the place. Georgia fourth in the AP poll. Preseason came out yesterday, so we'll cover that too. Lot to do today. Couldn't do it without you. Thanks so much for being here, and we couldn't do it without our friends at ESOG either. So with all that in mind, DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Engineered Solutions of Georgia, begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. Dial 678-ESOG now for a solution to your foundation and waterproofing problems.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
If you watch all of our live video programming here on the DawgNation video channels and follow along with the commenting that goes on Facebook or YouTube, or if you're a podcast listener that sees what happens on Twitter, or just pretty much any way that folks interact with DawgNation or the way that UGA fans interact with each other, I think you would probably agree that the most common question that gets asked, and this is month after month, year after year, this is across the board, about the most common question that gets asked is, who's the next guy that's going to commit going to be? That's just a question that Georgia fans always seem to have on their minds. Other college football fans, I would say, are probably very much the same way, and every now and then it's kind of nice to know that the average Georgia player isn't all that different, I would guess, than the average Georgia fan. An example of that from yesterday, Georgia got some very good recruiting news. Dejon Nugget Warren, four-star defensive back from the junior college ranks, made his pledge to the University of Georgia. There's a lot to like about Warren. We'll get more into that coming up in a moment, but it's almost as if Georgia fans can only be so happy for so long before the question becomes next of, okay, well, after this big recruiting win, who's coming up after that? What's happening after that? And as I said before, apparently Georgia players very much the same kind of way. Eric Stokes is a very good cornerback for Georgia right now. And upon hearing the news of Nugget Warren yesterday, had some congratulations to give out to Nugget Warren. But Eric Stokes, the way that Georgia folks kind of do from time to time, also pretty quickly pivoted towards what he believes might be coming next. Let me show you this from Eric Stokes' Twitter. Of course, if you're listening radio podcast, I'll read it to you. So Dejon Warren put out his commitment. By the way, happy 21st birthday yesterday to Nugget, who celebrated his birthday in style by making a commitment to the University of Georgia. Well, Eric Stokes congratulated him by saying welcome to the family. But then Eric Stokes also said, hey, listen, I'm just waiting on Nyland Green now to say that he's a dog. And, of course, we talked about Green a good bit last week on our DN90, and sometimes here on DawgNation Daily. We asked Jeff about Nyland Green there as well. Pretty impressive defensive back from the state of Georgia, a guy that it does seem like there's some evidence lately that Georgia might be in some pretty good shape with, and Georgia's obviously made defensive backs a priority for this class, the way that, for the most part, does every class. The Bullard news, Javon Bullard going back a few days ago, Dejon Warren yesterday, and Eric Stokes says, and listen, I think that Nyland Green is going to be the guy that's coming up next there. So it's fun to see Stokes kind of weighing in on that. A lot of Georgia fans going to feel very much the same way. And when you add what Stokes says there, when you look at the Warren news from yesterday and think about the recruiting weekend that Jeff Sintel reported on yesterday for DawgNation.com, big-time, top, five-star names, guys like Corey Foreman, guys like Mason Smith on their own dime coming to the city of Athens. Can't take a visit to Georgia right now, but are coming to the city of Athens. Amarius Mims thought to have been a part of that. There's been some social media evidence that some of these guys were here, getting together, hanging out a little bit, soaking up what they can learn about Athens until the visit process at the University of Georgia begins again. All of a sudden, you see Georgia in the mix for the kinds of players that you sort of expect Georgia to be in the mix for. And, boy, after a weird coronavirus lockdown, NCAA mandated dead period, where it just didn't seem like we were talking about UGA recruiting in the vein that we're used to talking about it, all of a sudden it feels very normal again, right? Big four-star commitment yesterday. Eric Stokes says, I'm expecting another four-star to come at some point in time. Social media evidence of elite five-star names being in Athens, even if they couldn't be at UGA. All of this feels very normal for the moment. Now, let me say one more thing about Dejon Warren before we move on here. First of all, Jeff Sintel had a great piece up at DawgNation.com chronicling Warren's decision. You should check that out. But there was one quote in particular that Jeff had from Warren that, for UGA fans who may be acquainting themselves with Warren, something that he says he likes about UGA, and maybe by comparison, something that UGA fans should also know about Warren. This is a clip that kind of stuck out to me a little bit. Quote, let me read this to you. This is from Jeff's story at DawgNation.com. Going back, now this is the original statement was made prior to the commitment to the University of Georgia, but I'm assuming in the fact that Warren says, I view myself